This is about a Thanksgiving dinner that you had about a year ago.
Well, yeah, a year ago.
This Jerry, the Jew character, I forget what his real name was, but it basically involves a conflict that the two of you had. But it begins with you driving over to this Thanksgiving dinner of Jess's mother, and then afterwards driving you back home, and then the conflict is in the middle. The thing that I thought was probably the standout was the use of the music. How it nicely parallaxes the scenes. The fact that it's so comedic. And Jerry the Jew, you mentioned this in an email, where most of your villains are not necessarily the Disney types, the one-dimensional villain. They're usually buffoons. And Jerry is a nice buffoon, but he also is a nasty person.
Yeah.
You also said that you underwrote him and that he was actually worse in real life.
Yeah.
But you didn't take it realistic in the drama.
Well, I mean, I do probably capture about 85-90% of his nastiness. I mean, I have his hitting on some of the other women happen sort of off screen. We hear about it later. We see him and the other women go off, and then we hear later from the women that he was making suggestive comments toward them and that kind of thing. So I didn't want to put all of that in there. The focus was on Jerry versus Jess. It was, basically this could have been called Jerry the Jew versus Jessica. That could have been the play.
But the brunt of the conflict involves you and Jerry.
Well, I mean,
it involves Jess towards the end, and that's where you lose it on him when he starts attacking her to the extent that she finally has an entire fit.
But in a larger sense, the play is about a conflict of values. Jessica mentions, and it's mentioned in the play when they're talking afterwards, how Jessica's mother has some of the same shallow materialistic values that Jerry the Jew speaks of, except that she is nicer about it. She doesn't. I mean, in real life, for example, Jessica's mother is reading one of Jessica's books, and she just doesn't get some of the stuff, and
there's too much thinking.
Yeah, and it's that kind of thing that gets Jessica, and so the whole thing. But I mean, it's a good chamber drama in a sense. I mean, it's a chamber play. It takes place going and coming in the cars. There's Danny and Jessica's always peeing every few minutes, driving there. Then you have Jerry the Jew in the middle scene where they're eating, and
you have at least in every other play just using the urinal at some point.
Well,
I think this is even how you end this play. I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, it ends with Danny having to pull over while Jessica goes to the bathroom. Yeah, it does. Danny blinks and turns to his right as Jess smiles, presumably in anticipation of a diminished bladder, and the lights black out. So it kind of
reminds me of the end of Another Woman, but with bathroom jokes.
Yeah. Well,
she's having this other insight. It's about going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Relief.
And I took in at the job I'm working now at this high school. Towards the end, Danny is quoting from some of the ridiculous cards that these kids had put up on the wall that kept falling down that I had to sweep away. So when I was tossing them out, I just looked at them and I said, "Oh, this would make a good material for a play." And so I used some of the of course I changed the names, but I used some of the idiotic comments to show how stupid the kids are and how stupid everyone is. The play is really a biting attack on early 21st century intelligence or lack thereof. And Jerry the Jew is the biggest example of it. He's got the Napoleon complex. He's yelling at Danny, calling Jessica a failure, and him and Danny just a janitor, and then Jess giving the double middle finger, saying "fuck you" to Jerry the Jew, and the reason too, people would say, well, isn't it being anti-Semitic to have the play subtitled Jerry the Jew? No, this play, in a sense, is the dramatic equivalent of my Ninth Murder, or Spick Takes on a Nigger, in that I'm using the fact that Jerry the Jew is such a perverse stereotype of the Jew. Danny even mentions in there that Aryan nation types would be, creaming in their shorts over this because it would be a perfect propaganda for Joseph.
Perhaps my favorite moment is when they're talking about Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And he just has this offside comment where he says, "That's a book where everyone dies. I like it."
Yeah. but just and the thing is, just like I had Henry Miller in these lesser weathers of Beethoven, as he steps into the face of Beethoven, having a black man step into the face of this Aryan representative. Here I have Jerry the Jew stepping into the face of Joseph Goebbels as it's put on stage, and again that emphasizes the comic aspect, because if you've ever seen, like, sometimes in Tom and Jerry cartoons or Bugs Bunny cartoons,
that's a good point, because it emphasizes the comedic aspect when you know that there's dramas out there that utilize that makes that symbol just go flat. So the context is what matters in using that visual.
Yeah, well, I mean, and for example, we talked about. Let me see here. I have this Shostakovich here. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to just turn up the music here, just to give people who are listening. So I'm going to click on the YouTube link. So this is Jerry the Jew's basic theme coming up, and so you should be able to hear it here.
If you write anything.
Okay, got to go through a Grammarly commercial. Yeah, Grammarly. Oh, okay. So here.
Technical malfunction.
So, can you hear it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you get a sense of the utter absurdity of this man, because this is basically Shostakovich's March for Stalin. This is his sort of parody of Stalin's grandiosity. So not only do we get his equation with Himmler, the guy who even more so, not Himmler, Goebbels, the guy who even more so was responsible for the denigration of Jews as a race with propaganda. We get Stalin, the other famous anti-Semite, on the other end of the tyrant spectrum. And so we have Jerry the Jew equated with Nazis and with Stalinism, and just with a dum, dum, da-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. And it's this over-the-top thing that, again, really cuts the man in half. Because he certainly has so he's got the Napoleon complex, Stalinism, the equation with Goebbels. So this is a guy who thinks he's the shit, but he's revealed as such a petty little idiot that he's so ignorant, and it makes the whole play, for better or worse, the play is a comedy, but this is a comedy that sort of takes over. As I'm writing it, you can't really take the Jerry the Jew character seriously. There are some, and as I mentioned, Jerry the Jew is toned down. Just as when you read the play I just sent you, A Rose for Emily, the Emily character was so psychotically, funnily fun, but the woman had a heart under here. Someone like Jerry the Jew, I don't think had a heart. So when you read the Rose for Emily play, that should be the next play you read, since it's the oldest one you haven't read. I mean, you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. Jerry the Jew is funny, but there's also a sinister thing, because he really believes in this crap. So,
what do you think of the idea that, because I've had this discussion with a number of people, some of the better people that I'm acquainted with, and what do you think of the idea of you being a janitor? But do you think that it would be any more disgraceful if you were working at NASA and still having to take time away from writing?
No, and that's one of the things that, I mean, and this is one of the things I've had conversations with Jessica, is like, and I told you recently, I think I put it on the Facebook account or whatnot when we talk or whatnot, how I tried to get back into my old job at a supermarket, and I found out I was blacklisted. I don't know if I mentioned that to you. So I can't even get back at that job, because they will hire back drug addicts who they fired. They will hire back people who were fired with arrest warrants where cops came looking for them. But me, who reported that company for breaking the law, I'm on a blacklist. So now I'm trying to get into places like Costco, or still looking at civil service stuff. There's a few other retail stuff. There's a place that's going to have on December 9th.
You have to deal ageism too.
Well, yeah, that's another thing too that you have to deal with the ageism, and it's not just blue collar workers like me. If you read up on it, even people who are doing well in management, making six figures, they lose their job for whatever reason, and they have to start out at making 35,000 at the most, so they take a 60-70% pay cut, which is even more than I took. I wasn't making as much as them, but I mean it is frustrating. But yeah, even if I was a NASA thing, or even if I was working a teaching job that I didn't like but was making 60 or 70 grand a year, it would still not be what I should be getting paid for. I mean, I've done 23 plays since we're talking now on November 19th. I started my first play on June 12th. So in 5 months and 1 week, I've written 23 plays. And these are not just, this is not just Joyce Carol Oates shit. This is not just Isaac Asimov shitting out books. These are great plays, averaging about 30,000 words per play, a little under. And who? It's like with the poems. There's no one. I mean, even if I drop dead tomorrow, my 23 plays, probably 17 or 18 of them are going to be in the top 25 plays of all time. And show me it. That maybe you could have.
How many do you think is next in line? You said that O'Neill is probably the second best, and the best of the modern playwrights. But
in English, I think what's his name, Ibsen has 5 or 6 great plays. Strindberg has more plays. I've only read a handful of his. I would give Ibsen the edge over Strindberg as a playwright. Shaw is underrated, as overrated as he was in the early 20th century. His plays are more realistic. The problem with Shaw as a playwright is he often wrote these ridiculously long introductions to the plays, 30 or 40 pages, and it's like, why? I mean, okay, if you look at it as reading as literature, that's fine, but it's not going to make it into the play. So, and then sometimes he'd even have long epilogues that went on pointlessly. O'Neill probably has 5 or 6 great plays. I mean, Long Day's Journey, Iceman Cometh. You could argue for maybe the whole trilogy of Electra. Each of the Electra plays has flaws, but as a whole, they parallax each other more. A Touch of the Poet has its moments. Anna Christie has its moments. I'm trying to think.
Desire in the Elms.
Desire in the Elms has some moments. I would put, and we talked about this before, I think there are probably 3 or 4 plays by Clifford Odets that are grossly underrated, that should be in the quote-unquote canon. I think 3 or 4 out of the plays that August Wilson ever wrote are great plays. I think you could have an argument for 2 or 3 of Miller. I'd put August Wilson ahead of Miller, even though he's currently not there. Although I don't think the best August Wilson play is quite as good as Death of a Salesman. I would say you'd have to argue in terms of published known playwrights, the 2 best are either Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams at his best is probably, within the overall writing, is probably an overall better, more poetic writer than O'Neill. But O'Neill, I think, understood drama a bit better.
But Tennessee Williams also had a big drop-off afterwards.
Yeah.
2 character play. I thought that there's these collections that they have of Tennessee Williams. And I thought that I had read all his plays. But I guess there's more. And he was influenced by Beckett later on. And I've read a few of them, and they're not good.
Yeah.
So he declined later on.
Well, and then there are a lot of well-known playwrights that were total shit. I mean, Harold Pinter is not a particularly good playwright. He's got 2 or 3 plays early on that have some potential. His latest stuff is dog shit. Bertolt Brecht is a fucking joke as a writer. I mean, you might as well just have people with placards saying, I'm pro this, I'm anti that. There's no development of character. He had no ability to do dialogue. It's really a shame. But anyway, to get back to the Jerry the Jew play, so that's about that.